Thanks for tuning in for wherever you are. A very warm welcome to Aleph Academy session. I am Avis and I'm your host today. Academy has remained as a pillar for community learnings, and I am excited to have the research team from Aleph today to share about the impact and the value of UX research in the current business landscape. Today is a very, very special day because we have two speakers, Ilker and Sophia. And by the end of the session, we will have two additional guests joining us in the discussion panel where we exchange thoughts and get down to the Q&A from all of you. During the session, if you have any questions for the speakers, do feel free to use the YouTube comment sections to drop your inquiries. So without further ado, I'll pass the stage to our very first speaker, Ilker. Over to you, Ilker.
Thanks, Avis, for the introduction, and hello, people out there. So we're going to look at, do we really need UX research together with Sophia? So our topics start with UX research in product strategy. Okay, this is our fast and fabulous UX research framework in Double Diamond. So we use that framework to make sure that we have continuous learning culture. So UX research helps product teams to get insights from customers quickly and deliver value iteratively. So we have two parts in the diamond. Left part is product innovation. This is where we learn and move faster. We learn from our customers and make better decisions. This is where we also innovate by design, not accident. The second part is the product improvement part. We are interested in measurable business outcomes in that part, and we want to make fact-based decisions quickly. We like to deliver value iteratively and rapidly in this product development part. So Double Diamond has also some stages. The first stage, we call it define. This is where we understand the problem statements. We want to make sure that we understand the business objectives, check the value proposition and the fit with business model canvas. Here we do a couple of user research activities such as foundational research, landscape and competitive analysis, desk research, pain gain analysis. Also, we look at archetypes and personas in that stage. The main idea here is to observe the users and understand their needs. If we understand the problem correctly, then all the solution we deliver for this problem will be right. The next stage we have is the discover stage. This is where we start ideation on the problem statement. We start our process on early prototypes, so we do concept testing to make sure those solutions works well with the customers. This is also the place where we start fine-tuning UX journeys and we look into information architectures. After that, we start thinking our MVP ideations, and we can also add some co-creation research workshops in that stage. The third stage we have is the design stage. This is where we fail fast and learn fast. This area, we do a lot of multiple tests. So we iterate the product with small increments. We learn from the customers and apply our learnings to the products. So if we fail, this is good because we learn, so we can improve the products. So that's why we like failing fast and learning fast. The fourth stage we have in Double Diamond is the deliver stage. This is where we start coding. This is the area where we try to avoid last-minute surprises. Here we try to bulletproof the product. We do our final usability testing. Also, another thing, we start thinking of future and long-term research. So how we gonna measure the success of this product after we release it? And this is also, we start thinking about in those terms. So if you look at the values of user research, it provides a foundation for initial design work, and it's a way of validating the design and the product strategy, and it creates designs that are truly relevant to our users. If you do it in a way we explain in the Double Diamond, it can also help you to increase productivity, increase sales and revenues, reduce the development times and cost. I'm hearing that you may be asking why this is happening. Think about that if you can't have the problem statement well defined. So all the effort you do in the design and development stage will be solving the wrong problem. Or if you don't understand the needs of your customers, you develop the product, but nobody needs that product, so you cannot sell it. So that's also affect your sales and revenues. Also, usability testing helps you to identify the problems with their product, so you don't have to go back to product and fix it, because fixing in development is really costly. One thing is you lose your face value because your customers, if you have a lot of usability problems, your customers won't like it. Second thing is going back and fixing and releasing all those maintenance is all costly and it's cumbersome for us. So how we create products our users love. First, we start well-defined problem statements and place those plans into the prototype and to a product. Second, we start our early research and we have some trends and patterns discovered, and we take them to actionable items. Third, a learning point. So we test the product, fail, learn, and iterate the product. All those failing becomes a successful product for us. So it becomes a continuous feedback loop for our learning team. And what happens after that? If we have this cycle, fourth statement will be, we can have quickly and flexibly look at the customer's behaviors and patterns, so we can address the market needs and customers' needs very quick. So in a nutshell, a product strategy foundation starts with understanding the problems and the user needs, apply them into the prototype, get insight from the users. So we do user research for that and apply this into the prototype. And ultimately we close the feedback loop. So next step for us, how we get the stakeholders buy-in. So from our team, Sophia is going to talk about that, and she will give a lot of ideas how you can educate your customers, stakeholders, and how you can teach them about the value of user research.
Thanks, Ilker. So now that we've learned the role of UX research and product strategy, let's talk about how we can get stakeholder buy-in. So in my experience, getting stakeholder buy-in can be a little bit of a challenge. You do have to work a little bit harder to explain and demonstrate the value of research because to a certain extent, it's less quantifiable, the outputs of research. So you do, for example, compared to when a designer designs a beautiful screen, that's a clear quantifiable output, or when an engineer builds an app. So most of the pushback in my experience boils down to two things: budget and timeline constraints. And therefore UX research actually becomes the easier one to kind of push out of the design process. So these budget and timeline constraints can manifest themselves in maybe someone saying, our senior leaders, senior stakeholders are so happy with the output that we don't need to test it. Or maybe someone could say, we don't really want to do user testing because what if we test our designs and we find out that there are a lot of problems, then that might delay our timeline. So in these type of situations, how might we get stakeholder buy-in? So one way to look at it is by treating it like a UX problem that we're solving. So I've outlined a couple steps that you could try. So let's get into it. So the first step is to understand their why. I think as researchers, we always try our best to show empathy to our users. In an interview scenario, for example, when someone says something, your first instinct will be to ask them why, and get to the root of it. So the same sort of behavior and curiosity should be shown to our stakeholders to understand the why behind the no and behind the pushback, understand the root of it, so that then down the line we can tailor a research approach that meets that or addresses that. So I've outlined a couple of questions that you can potentially ask the client here to get to the why. So the first one is, why do you feel negatively towards user research? Can you tell me what happened the last time you did it? What is your ideal timeline and ideal approach? And what are some of the ideal outcomes if we were to proceed with user research? So once you have identified the no, you can then begin to cater your research plan to address these specific concerns. And the second step, so in addition to talking to the stakeholder and getting their view, you should also talk to the people making the product itself. So these could be your POs, your colleagues, or anyone directly involved in designing the product. So try to pinpoint at this stage what the impact is of not doing user research. You try to understand at this point what the working team is struggling with, both with, in a product point of view and a user understanding point of view. So again, I've outlined a couple of questions that you can potentially ask yourself. So are there any gaps in their knowledge when it comes to their users? Is the team unable to narrow down the scope and prioritize? Are they stuck in the same kinds of conversations? And also, are there any existing analytics that you can look at to identify potential problem areas? So when we look at these analytics also, it's good to point out that the data only tells you the what, but it doesn't tell you the why. People tell you the why. So it's just good to take note of that. The third point is to tailor your proposal. So after you've done a couple things at this point, right? The first thing you've done is identify why stakeholders are pushing back on user research. You've identified potential product and knowledge gaps. At this stage, you can tailor your proposal and educate the clients on the different research methods that are available that will fit their specific needs. And it's also a good idea maybe at this point to also share some sample outputs or outcomes of a particular research method that you're proposing. So one way that you can do it is actually you can demonstrate usefulness through smaller pilot projects. So what these are cheap, fast, stripped down user research. These can come in a couple of forms. I've outlined some that we've done in the past, but it's not limited to these. So you could do very simplified user testing, maybe with less people. You could do simplified prototypes as well, which goes hand in hand with user testing sometimes. You could even do it on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be a fully fleshed out prototype. You could even do heuristic evaluation just to say, here is what we know based on our expert analysis, but if you talk to users, you'll find out a lot more. Or even desk research, if that's also a good way to say we know what the market trends are, we know what the opportunities are, but we want to validate this with users. So these sort of smaller pilot projects kind of serve as like free samples that people give out in supermarkets. Once people get hooked and they like the taste, hopefully they can then be able to see the value and hopefully buy into the process. So I had an experience with a client in the past that weren't so keen on doing user research because they were on a tight timeline and they wanted to build the app very quickly and they wanted to take research out of that process to just shorten the timeline a bit. But we did not want to proceed to build without doing any form of user research. So what we did was instead we did a little bit of a guerrilla testing. So what that is we tested with about 5 or 6 people. We tested with people that we could find around us. So it wasn't fully fleshed out and it was quick and dirty to a certain extent, but we wanted to make sure that the usability was at least, good to go. So when we did this user testing, we actually found out that people really struggled to log in, which is such an important feature. And when we found this out, we brought it back to the client to tell them, we don't need 6-7 weeks of research, but here is something that we did find out from just a very quick type of research that we did, and that, research doesn't have to be very time consuming. And hopefully through this little exercise, we've demonstrated the value of research without taking up too much time or resources. So step 4 is to involve the stakeholders in research. We should encourage them to be a part of this for as much as possible from the start to the end. So because when people are involved, when stakeholders are involved, we as researchers or the team, we don't need to spend as much time to explain the methods and the results, and there is more empathy built towards the process and towards the users as well. So once they've experienced it firsthand and they can see the value, it can build organizational support for doing future research. So how do we get stakeholders involved in research? We should involve them early. So what we mean by involving them early is planning the study. It's actually very important that we align the objectives before we get into it. So the research planning, the questions, the participant profiles, all of this goes into the planning stage in the beginning, and it's important to have stakeholder buy-in and approval. Secondly, we can also invite them to any of the user testing sessions that we have that they can make time for, but we suggest that as much as possible, these stakeholders should not only just attend one, at least attend a couple of them, so that they will be less likely to take a single session at face value. So a tip for actually involving stakeholders as part of your research process is actually to involve not just the researchers and the designers, but also the project management team, because it's up to the project management team to actually book their time and explain the agenda. And so it's really a team sport to get stakeholders involved in the process of research. And lastly, now that you've done all that hard work, it's time to present your findings. And at this stage, it's also really crucial to tailor your presentation depending on the specific group that you're presenting to. So this is something that you'll naturally figure out the more you work with the same client. But there is a baseline that you can roughly work with if you're not so sure. So in the beginning, you can assume high-level executives typically want only an executive summary because they don't have much time. But if you're presenting to, for example, someone that actually needs to implement your recommendations, like your POs, your designers, or developers, these group of people, they may actually want to know a little bit of the details. So in my experience, I've done quite a few research presentations in the past, and I've observed such different stakeholder styles. Some high-level executives want all the detail, all and everything. There are other high-level executives that really just want bam, 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 high-level executive summary. And it's a little bit hard to figure out in the beginning if you've never worked with them, but a good way to figure out the client's specific presentation preference is by asking other people who might have worked with them. So for example, like your account managers, business directors, CEO, or anyone outside of the team, of the working team that might have had interactions with them before, to kind of just get a sense of what they might like. Okay, so now within the regional research team, we actually did a quick value proposition canvas to quickly identify how the research team can add value to product managers. This is an activity that we did on Miro, but to sum it up, we came up with this statement. Here's our statement. Researchers help clients unearth real user insights through a tailored research approach that achieves business goals. So I think if I can just sum up how to get stakeholder buy-in, it's really to just be a little bit more creative and be a little bit more flexible with the way we approach clients that may be a little bit more hesitant, and demonstrate the values in small steps. And then hopefully they can then buy into the bigger process of research. So going back to the title of this presentation, do we really need UX research? We've invited some of our colleagues from all over the region to give their take on whether or not we need user research. So here it is.
Research is a very valuable tool.
We have our own thoughts, which is nice, which is good, but we need to validate those thoughts, those design, those technology to the real user who are going to use that design.
As engineers, I think it takes time and money to build things, so I guess UX research helps validate that we are building the right thing.
Do we need primary research in every user experience project? Probably not. And timelines and budgets, sometimes that decision is made for us. Do we need at least secondary research, some form of secondary research in every project? Probably yes. Although it would be nice to be able to do primary research with every project.
I think UX research is important so that we can really have the empathy and really get the feedback from the real user, not just our assumption on how the product should work.
Yes, we need UX research to do two things that are very critical for any project. So number one, problem discovery, to really understand and establish the relevant product roadmap addressing current users' needs and challenges. But also during solution testing, to remove our own bias and measure with qualitative and quantitative data our solution that was designed. But going further, we need also to bear in mind that we should go and do more in terms of research.
I would not limit our practice to just UX research, but rather research in general, which means looking into data and analytics, looking into user requirements, looking into their pains and their gains, as well as adding that intuition from the design practitioner or the strategic practitioner to come up with solutions to solve those problems.
As a UX researcher, I'm inclined to tell you that the answer is yes.
Okay, and now we'll get into the panel discussion segment of this presentation. Avis will be moderating it, so I think I'll let Avis take over from here.
That's good.
Okay.
I don't know.
So, thank you, Sophia and Ilker, for the presentation. Now, I would like to introduce the two other panelists in the session right now, which is Joshua from Indonesia and Ferisha from Malaysia, who are here to share with us some of their experience on their research journey thus far, and how do they actually, in their own ways, convince their clients in that research is one of the most important steps, or one of the important steps that in crafting a meaningful and successful product, right? So I have a first question for Joshua, yourself, right? Have you ever encountered a client who is hesitant to do research as part of the design process? And if yes, how did you actually sell this user research piece to the client?
Yeah, I think the answer would be absolutely yes. I mean, yeah, we all, I think, have encountered such client. Yeah, right. But on my side, luckily, it's not that the client reject user research. It's more on the timeline and budget usually. So how can we, as how are we tell our client the importance of UX research? It's just to do the UX way with that timeline and budget. We know that it won't be the ideal research. It won't be like the really good one, the great UX research. But just by and when we do the research anyway, and we show the client the result, they will kind of learn how valuable user research is, and that's how we begin to sell UX research. So it's like a progress. We cannot do that in one instant. Let's say in a meeting, then suddenly everything changed. It doesn't work like that. In its process, so we do it with all the limitations that the client gave us, but we will work our best and show the result. Then we will progressively improve the user research process until it reach the level that is quite ideal. So yeah, that's from my side.
So in other words, we start with lean research, right? A very lean version of the research. Show them the value of what research can do, and how research actually impact the product itself, the growth of the product itself, before getting the buy-in, the full buy-in, right? Understand. Ilker, on your from your experience thus far, right? Can you share with us how do you convince your client from not believing in research? I'm sure from your experience, many years of experience, you have encountered some, right? So how do you actually go ahead and convince them?
Okay, so the convincing part actually start showing them the results. So if let's say you don't have any research resources available to you with the client, you can also try things like look into the literature available based on the client, so you can understand their needs first. So and look at their problem statement and come with like what are other competitors are doing, what's the landscape look like, and what could be the research strategies and hypotheses you should ask over there. So you start a process of discussion and ideation with the clients, because if they don't have the question, you don't have the need of answer. So you start giving them the opportunity to asking right question about their objectives and business strategies. So once they realize that, oh, we don't have answer for that, they usually come up and ask, how shall we do that? So that's the first thing. Second thing, not everything is hidden under UX research only. You can also ask, tap on the other resources available in companies. For example, if they do have marketing research department or data analytics department, you can also pose those questions and hypotheses to see if they do have some data sets to answer those questions. Usually, they, if the client has a marketing and data analytics team, they can answer the questions around what is happening and how it's happening. So then you will have a lot of quantitative backlog from marketing team and data analytics team, so you can get those data points. But then the second question you start asking is, why is this happening? So if you can get that point, probably it's time for the UX research to come down into the play and asking question, why is this happening? So we should apply our strategies like interviews, or it could be in a discovery research. So there you start a play and start relationship about the client. How can we help them and how can we value them? So I think the first thing is make them aware that there are some questions out there. So you need to answer around their business strategy. So then the second is, finding the answer together. So it's all a partnership starting.
Yeah, I think totally agree with you. It's all about partnership. I think at the end of the day, what a client is looking for is, do we really understand their needs, right? So by making them realize that there are gaps, by posting questions to them, where not trying to challenge in a way, it's more of identifying where are the gaps, and if let's say we don't have a existing answer to it, then that is where we need to research a little bit more to find out and address it along the way as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Going on to the next questions that I have, right, is some of the projects. I think a lot of the researchers are a lot of time they are embedded in a project for a short period of time, for a certain period of time. And once the research phase or the focus on the research phase is done, right, and the team is the project is slowly going into the crafting phase or solution, right? How do we actually stay in touch with the product team, the designers, and how do we make sure that the knowledge that we have uncovered, the information that we have uncovered, right, is being carried forward from a product perspective, right? Farisha, do you have any thing from your experience that you can maybe share with us?
Right. So the way that I've gone about this previously in my experience is that we always want to make sure that whatever our recommendations are provided, they also align with the business goals. So we want to make sure that when we are doing research for something, although we are advocating for our users, there needs to be a balance between what exactly we are providing for our users versus what our users want, because no one voice is more important than the other. So that's kind of how we ensure that once we get to the crafting phase, we're all aligned. And then speaking of the crafting phase, when we are in that phase, the way that we want to remain connected is we always want to make sure that there are open conversations. We want to establish these kind of support systems so that we can boost, I guess, the morale and the thinking behind crafting, balancing between the business goals and, again, the user needs. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, so basically is aligning the team and of course with the clients or our stakeholders, and sharing the same beliefs, right? Once we have that aligned, we will have the same goal and we work towards that. That's how we actually ensure that the knowledge is being carried carried on as well. Sophia, I've learned that you have also have some experience on that, where you have worked very closely with the team, and you know, how do you actually make sure that things are being carried forward?
Hi, everyone. So I think the best way is, for example, if I'm part of a team and I know that my time there is finite, I like to involve the team as much as I can as part of the process. So all the way from when we're forming the questions, how we can tweak the prototype for a user testing session, how we run this session, how we moderate, and all the way to how we generate insights. All of this should be collaborative as well. I think not just, I think in most situations, it should be a collaborative effort. And another thing is, so that's what I try to do. So if the designers are a part of the process with me, if I happen to leave the team, then they would already be empowered and they would be equipped with the right tools and knowledge. Another thing that I do is if I do have to leave a team, is I create like a repository where all my files, all my rituals are all in there. I even include like tips. So for example, like if I've built a sort of relationship with a client and I know the client's little quirks and what they like, I try to put that in there as well, so that whoever has to take over will have a little bit of an easier time based on my experiences. So, yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I think there's a few pointers that you have mentioned just now. Is collaborative effort. I think communicate and over communicate is important. You need to make sure that the team actually works together, right? And I think one thing is quite interesting is equip the team with the knowledge itself, right? How equip them with the knowledge and also the techniques, the tools that you use, and make sure that you know, not only researchers understand how to do research, right? But everyone in the team should understand, should have the research mindset. And most importantly is documentation. I think that is also something that helps the team carry forward the knowledge from your findings as well.
Yeah,
right.
And if I can just add on that point, sorry, Avis, to cut you off, is don't leave
no
documentation till the very end. Make it part of your process and build it into your process, and don't leave it till the end. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like progressive updates will save you a lot of time at the end of the you know, engagement, right? And that's also show that we are very organized and we are always, you know, on the ball when it comes to, you know, sharing our knowledge as well.
Yes.
Let's take some questions from the floor. I think the very first question is, what are some examples of products that went wrong and that should have used UX research? I think Ilker has a lot of experience, so maybe we ask Ilker, have you encountered such situation and how do you tackle it?
Okay, so I am trying to keep the names of the companies, brand, and products I work, so it's hard to answer, but I'll give you the story. So first of all, it could come any stage of the product cycle. So it could be innovation cycle or the improvement cycle. Instead of looking like what products goes, I should first start why they fail and why there should be user research. Actually, they fail at the very beginning if first the person who has the highest impact and salary in the company start making the decision without collaboration with the other parties, including your customers and your users. So these are the most of the times I see that products fail. So when you do the product development, I think it should be a flat decision making of all the teams. So nowadays it's really hard to see all the angles. So you should have the decision making when it comes to MVP workshops with your product team, engineering, finance, user research, design, and the other business teams as well should be part of the decision making some level. So if you have that decision making all together and centralize your user, then this becomes a product success. If you don't do that, that will fail. That's where user research comes in a play to give that story of the user to rest of the team. As Sophia mentioned, we should collaborate with other players. So it's a team game. It's not like siloing. You user research only have the reports. So we broadcast our findings and give the stories of our users with the product. So once we do have that, I think that we avoid failures. Of course, it's not a like silver bullet. If you have user research, that means that you will have a great product, but it will at least improve your chances. So it will have higher chances of success than no research.
Got it. It's at the end of the day, it's all about team alignment, right? It's everyone aiming for the same goal rather than one person making the decisions, right? Yeah. Any thoughts on your side, Sophia?
In terms of a product that hasn't performed that well, I can't think of any real world examples at the moment, to be honest, because when I think about products that are out there that don't perform well, there could be many reasons behind it. And it could be attributed to not doing research, but it could also be a lot of other things. But off the top of my head is probably the example that's most recent to me. It was the one that I presented in the during the presentation as well, about a particular client who didn't want to test. We decided anyway because we felt like we needed to, and we almost went to build an app that users struggled with logging in. So that would have been catastrophic, and that's an example that I've personally experienced.
Right. Understand. Okay, now going to the next questions, right? How do you go about recruiting the right UX research participants? I think Joshua, from your side, you have quite a number of experience in advising on what are the recruitment process and how do we engage the right participants. Maybe you want to share a bit of your experience.
Yeah, so I think it will depend on the client's budget and also the willingness. So there are clients who don't really have the budget for UX research, and in that case, well, we need to find the participants ourselves. But if the client has more budget, we always advise them to have kind of this recruitment agency, because it will be very good if they can manage to hire this recruitment agency. Since we know that sometimes we as UX researcher, we don't have that link to find participants. We really good at doing the research, but when it comes to recruitment, it's like another field with another expertise. So it's better to leave the recruitment for the expert. But in some of our clients, we also try to collaborate with the client regarding the recruitment. So we will try to look at their database, because obviously they have their customers' data, right? And along with our client, we will try to find the right participants for the research. And as for the participants itself, the segmentation, the requirements, usually it will be discussed within the internal team and also with the client, because we know that certain features, certain products probably will cater only a specific kind of user. It's not for everyone. That's why we will have to be intentional also in our recruitment to recruit the right segment, the right user for the product or feature.
Can I add something to Joshua?
Yes.
Okay.
Ilker.
Thanks. So I'll also answer the other angle of the question. Maybe it will give some idea to you. Let's talk about the wrong participants as well. So wrong participant is product owner is not the participant. So if you're not testing their products for the product owners, don't put them inside of test, because you are the one who is building the application. So you cannot put them in the test. Also, if you designers, if you design something, you cannot test with your designers. So that means they cannot be part of it. And another thing, Joshua mentioned about a lot of things about recruiting companies, so they have the expertise. So what they do usually, they do have their panel. So maybe as a team, you should have your internal team starting your own panel. So when you have the panel, you look for the participants who are open to talk, because usability testing and user experience is all about like expressing your ideas and clearly articulating what you see. So usually what I do, for example, if there are participants who has that skill of talking about their experience and who's really talkative about what they experience, I flag them as participants. So for a next study, of course, the next study has a lot of dependencies. So if I am having a product repeating again, I don't use the same participants for recruitment. But for another product, maybe you can consider those participants as well. So flag those people who can talk about your products if you do your own recruitment panel.
But just add on to this question, right? Do you think that referring back to our findings, usually there is always the personas that we have defined, right? Referring back to those findings and the target audience to identify the right participants is also a part of the key factors.
Yeah, that's all about like crafting your usability test objectives, and then that depends. Like sometimes you just select person who has no experience with the product. Sometimes you have to select the person who has a lot of experience with the product. So it all depends on your user question. So you have to look at what is your question and objective for that test, or it will guide you throughout finding the participants, so you will have a right balance of people. But another tips for that, try to have some outliers if you have budgets. So because outliers may have good ideas about your product, because it gives you totally different angle you don't think about it. For example, if you're testing a product for younger people, maybe get one elderly people to see how they experience the product, although they are not in your customer profile directly. They can give you a lot of examples. For example, they can talk about their own kids or grandparents as well during the test. So you never know where is the good insights. You can try those as well.
That's a good point. I think thinking about the extremes are important, right? When it's come to crafting the product planning, the research planning, or ensuring that the product is actually well crafted, and we think about the extreme cases as well, right? So that's a very good point. Going on to the next question, how research enables to generate insights related to the ROI of the product development. Maybe anyone from the panel can want to answer this. How research are able to generate insights that is related to the ROI of the product development. Ilker, do you
I think I want to jump in a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think this will also depend on the product life cycle. If the product is still on development, obviously we cannot measure the ROI. So the ROI can only be measured after the product going live, and that's also the way we can kind of evaluate our research, whether our research is on point, or probably let's say from the case of, okay, we might use the wrong participant, the wrong segment of participant, or the question that we use is quite leading. So we will know that the kind of answer after the product or feature already go live, and then do the data analytics on the ROI. So we cannot really do that before, because it's we don't have the data, and ROI will need a real data, right? So again, it will be on the after product life kind of thing.
After product life. Okay. Okay. Anyone wants to add on to this? Ilker, do you want to share your experience as well?
I think Joshua made a good start on this one. When you look at the development, it can go different way. Like it's like code efficiency versus like a development cycle, or make it shorter. So what I can say, if you have usability issues and you need to fix that, that means you have to revisit your code, and you need to fix things. So that is helping you in terms of time and in terms of resources as well. And after you release the product, the one you can correlate is more than development of the product is the retention rate, or how you onboard the customers. So what you look at the transactions you have, so you can have some correlation. And between design changes, if you can have hypothesis driven experimental thinking in your product development, you can say, for example, if I fix that, what's gonna happen, so that you can start correlating that with the business numbers, and you can see the effects. But this requires you think in terms of hypothesis, and when you do the development and design, think about writing right hypothesis you can measure, that you can correlate with the numbers.
Yeah, got it. Okay, very quickly moving on to one last question. I think we are running out of time. Someone asked about what is more valuable for insights, qualitative or quantitative, on how do we convince clients for one over another? I think this is questions very frequently asked during our research phase, right? So, Farisha, yourself, do you want to take this question?
Yeah, thank you. Right. So before I get into answering which one I think is more valuable, first we need to look at why we use quantitative research versus why we use qualitative research. So a lot of the times when we're using quantitative research, we want to do so because we want to validate a certain thing. So for example, do users like design A versus design B? And let's say, and the reason why we need to do that using quantitative research is so that we have enough statistical power to make sure that the difference is significant enough. But quantitative research doesn't really tell us the why, it just tells us yes or no. And that's where qualitative research will come in. So when we use qualitative research, we want to really get in-depth insights, understand why, understand the hows, and only when we understand the hows and the whys do we know how we can improve this experience, what we can do to tackle some of the issues that they're facing, or what we can do in order to make it even better if they're already satisfied with the current product. So that being said, I would say, based on my experience, giving qualitative insights is always a bit more insightful for the clients in that sense.
I understand. Got it. Sophia, do you have anything to add on to this?
I completely agree with Farisha with when we use qualitative and when we use quantitative. So quantitative, as she said, is more if you want to get statistical confidence. And when you need statistical confidence is usually when you want to convince stakeholders or you want to go for one solution over another, and you need that confidence to proceed with. Qualitative, again, as Farisha said, is when you get into the human emotions, the human behaviors. And it's really hard to say, I think, which one is better than the other. A lot of the times, actually, we use a little bit of both. And the honest answer is that it depends on what you're trying to look for. But I think the best way is actually to use a little bit of, if you can. You have the skill confidence, you have all the numbers, and then you can drill down into the why, and you can go really deep if you follow that up with qualitative research methods.
Yeah, I think often in the project discussion, we also talk a lot about how quantitative data can actually advise or add on to for us to identifying the possible gaps, right? And it aids us in digging more deeper, finding more deeper insights through qualitative research, and it actually sometimes it defines how we actually craft our questions for the user testing as well, or the user interviews, right? So yeah, I think thank you very much. So I think we have come to an end. It's almost time where we still have a lot more of questions, but apologies, we are unable to answer all of them in the call. So we will ensure that we revisit all the unanswered questions on Medium. If you have any other questions, you also feel free to comment or reach out to us if you can. Right. So once again, I want to thank my the panelists and the speakers and everyone who is tuning in on the YouTube, right? And do look out for the next Academy sessions next month. We will be having a regional speaker for that. And moving forward, on behalf of the Academy, interested to host a session, reach out to the Academy team. And once again, I am Avis, your guest host for this Academy session. Thank you very much for tuning in.